Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, we're going to talk about leadership today, but with a twist. What if I told you leadership isn't something you are, but just a temporary state you're in? It's a simple idea, but it could completely change the way you see yourself and everyone you work with. You know that feeling, right? One moment, you're on top of the world, feeling like this incredible rock star leader, and then, like the very next day, you find yourself completely stressed out, micromanaging the tiniest details. Sound familiar at all? Yeah, if you've ever felt that kind of whiplash, I've got some good news. You're not inconsistent, you're not broken, you're just human. You're simply responding to what's going on around you. And getting a handle on that difference, that's the real key to being a better and honestly, a more compassionate leader. So, let's talk about that leadership roller coaster. The reason it feels so jarring is that, well, we've kind of been taught to think about leadership in a totally wrong way. We love putting people and ourselves into these neat, fixed little boxes, and that right there is where all the trouble begins. Just think about the words we use, right? We say things like, oh, she's such an insecure leader, or he's just indifferent. We throw these labels around like they're permanent, carved-in stone personality traits. But that's a huge misunderstanding of how human beings actually operate. Okay, so if that's the wrong way, what's the alternative? It's all about this simple but really powerful shift in how we see things. We need to stop thinking of leadership as an identity and start seeing it for what it is, a state. And this is the big reframe. You've got identity thinking on one side. That's when you tell yourself, I am an insecure leader. It feels permanent, like a personal flaw. It's a judgment. But then you have state thinking. This says, I am in an insecure state. See the difference? It's fluid, it's temporary, it's just a response to what's happening. And that tiny change in wording, it opens up this huge door to curiosity and growth instead of just, shame. And look, this isn't just some nice feel-good theory. This is actually backed by decades of solid research. There's something called situational leadership theory. It's been around since the 60s, and it basically proved that the best leaders aren't the ones with one style. They're the ones who can read a situation and adapt. So what we often mistake for inconsistency, it's actually flexibility. It's a strength. All right, so let's dive into the 3 leadership states you'll probably recognize. And here's the thing to remember. Any of us can find ourselves in any of these 3 states. Sometimes we can cycle through all of them in a single day. First up, we have the insecure state. The stuff you can see on the surface, that's the micromanagement, the avoiding of tough conversations, but the real story is in the triggers. It's not about being a bad person. It's a direct reaction to stuff like unclear expectations, chaos in the company, or maybe even just the ghost of a past failure. When a leader's confidence gets shaken by the situation, their default move is to grab for control. Yeah, you gotta understand, when we're under stress, our brains literally flip into threat mode. So that sudden urge to control every single tiny detail, it's not coming from a place of malice. It's a protective mechanism. It's your brain trying to shrink the uncertainty and protect itself from what it sees as a threat. Okay, next up is the indifferent state. We've all seen this leader, right? They seem detached, checked out, like they're just on autopilot. But what looks like I don't care on the outside is often hiding something much, much deeper. It's usually a coping mechanism for serious burnout, for being completely overwhelmed, or for dealing with big personal struggles that have just sucked all their energy away. It's not apathy, it's self-preservation. And get this number is pretty shocking. There's this thing called presenteeism. It means you're physically there at work, but you're not really there mentally or emotionally. And it can slash productivity by 1/3 or even more. So a leader who's pushing through a personal crisis isn't being indifferent. They're just running on empty. Their tank is drained. And finally, we have the inspiring state. Now, here's the most important thing to get about this one. Inspiring leaders are not superhuman. They haven't somehow eliminated all stress and insecurity from their lives. No way! What they've done is they've built up the skills to manage it. They're good at creating clarity. They lead by example, and, this is huge, they show real, authentic vulnerability. And that's where trust is born. So, okay, if leadership really is this fluid, situational thing, why are we so bad at seeing it in other people? Why do we jump to conclusions all the time? Well, it turns out our brains are wired with this little mental shortcut that honestly messes us up more often than not. It's got a fancy name, the fundamental attribution error. But all it really means is that when we see someone do something, our brain's default setting is to blame their character for it, not their situation. We totally underestimate the power of context. So we see a boss micromanaging, and our brain goes, ah, insecure person, not, I wonder what's going on in their world that's making them act this way. And this little mental shortcut, it has massive real-world consequences. Here's how it plays out. We see a behavior. We slap a label on it. We completely ignore the situation. And then we try to solve the wrong problem. It's like we might put a leader on a performance plan for being disengaged when what they actually need is help and support because they're completely burned out. So the big question is, how do we break out of this trap? It all comes down to making a conscious shift from judgment to curiosity. And this is the part where we turn all this theory into a really powerful, practical tool you can use every day. Because this isn't just interesting trivia, right? This gives you a real framework for managing yourself and for dealing with the people around you. It all boils down to two simple shifts in focus. First, looking inward at yourself, and second, looking outward at others. So when it comes to you, it's about shifting from beating yourself up to just observing yourself. Instead of that inner voice going, ugh, why am I so controlling? You can train it to ask, okay, what's happening right now that's making me feel like I need to control everything? Just identifying those triggers, that creates a little bit of space between the feeling and your reaction. And that tiny space, that's where all the magic, all the growth happens. And then, when you look outward at other people, you do the same thing. You swap out that immediate judgment for genuine curiosity. So instead of your brain jumping to, what is wrong with this person? You can lead with a simple, powerful question. Hey, are you okay? When you explore the why behind the behavior, you can offer support that actually helps instead of just trying to fix the symptom. So, at the end of the day, this is the big takeaway. Leadership isn't some title you get, it's just a state you're in. And being able to see that fluidity in yourself and in other people, that's not a soft skill. It's just a more accurate, a more effective, and honestly, a more human way to lead. So the question we should be asking isn't what kind of leader am I? The real question is, what state am I in right now and why?